Hello, everyone. This is Alan for the MacGuffin Podcast.com, and today we have a very special guest, local Seattle filmmaker, Mr. Jason Reid.
Hey.
Thank you very much for joining us here on the podcast.
Thanks.
So we're here to talk about two films that you directed. The first one is Sonicsgate, the film that came out a couple years ago. Is that correct?
It came out at the end of 2009. So
Okay. So in case for the people out there that have been living under a rock, the film talks about how our Seattle Supersonics were taken from the city and were brought to Oklahoma City to become what they are today, the Thunder. First off, let's start off on a good note, and let me congratulate you on the success of the film and the critical acclaim that it's received. I mean, I can only imagine how your lives have changed because of the film. Right?
Yeah, I mean, on the positive note, I mean, that's one thing is we made this film, and really our goal all along was to do what we could to get the story told to as broad an audience as possible, and do what we could to bring back the Sonics to Seattle. I mean, that was always our mission. That's why we released it for free online, and to get the accolades and the critical acclaim and everything that came along with it was just bonus. But still, if we could just bring a team back to Seattle and have them be called the Sonics, then that's our mission and kind of our end game.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. How exactly did this happen? I mean, how did our team, after being in Seattle for 41 years, was like taken away from us?
I think it started when Howard Schultz bought the team, and sort of a disconnect happened with the community through how he handled certain players and just how he handled running the organization, to the point where 5 years later he was so frustrated with local government and not building a new arena or refurbishing Key Arena again, and the team losing money every year, he sold it to a group of Oklahoma businessmen led by Clay Bennett. You know, their intention was never to keep the team in Seattle, even though they signed an agreement that said they would make good faith best efforts to keep the team, and the NBA and Commissioner David Stern were willing to let them move under his watch. And you know, we can't forget about the local, both city and state officials, Mayor Nichols, who signed a settlement to allow the team to leave, and people like Frank Chop, the Speaker of the House, and Christine Gregoire, our governor, who basically didn't do anything really to keep the team here when they had ample opportunities to do so.
Okay, so one of the big moments in the film was the press conference that Howard Schultz put on, pretty much telling everyone that he's going to be selling the team to Clay Bennett.
Right.
Now, for me as a Sonics fan, this was a huge red flag, a huge warning. I mean, what do you think he was thinking, like during
well,
this time?
I can tell you what his justification is, and he believed that he had hit a stalemate with local legislatures in terms of his ability to get an arena done. He's one of the most respected business leaders in our community, and he went to Olympia and asked for what he believed was a reasonable offer to get an arena done, and he was kind of laughed at. And he went to try to talk to the city officials, and Nick Licata was saying things like the Sonics have no cultural value to the city. So, you know, he decided that selling it to Bennett, this is his justification, not mine, that it stood a better chance of him, being a credible threat to move the team, of him getting legislation passed, as opposed to Howard Schultz, who no one would believe that Howard Schultz would move the team.
Right.
So that was his justification by signing a letter of understanding with Clay Bennett at the time of the sale that said, oh, he'll make a good faith best effort for a year to keep the team here. That was Howard Schultz's justification for his action.
Right.
That says, oh, well, I'm preserving the history of basketball here in the Northwest by selling to Clay Bennett because he wants to keep the team here. When anyone like you or me was watching that, knew that they were out the door to Oklahoma City. I mean, it was frustrating to watch in real time, and that's like a huge reason we made the movie, is like watching these guys lying through their teeth, then seeing how everything went down and watching it in real time the whole way. We couldn't help but hold them accountable.
Yeah. Now, this guy Clay Bennett, I mean, from the very beginning, he kept saying, my main intention is to keep this Seattle Sonics in Seattle. But clearly from the film, that was clearly a lie. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, there's something about moving the team to like Renton, and the thing about the emails and everything.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they basically went in, and everything on the surface was trying to keep the team here. So they hired an expensive PR and marketing company to do $1 million plans of where it would be best for an arena. They chose a location in Renton at the 405 interchange. It's really one of the worst traffic interchanges in the area, and they chose that as their site for the arena. And so they were doing these things, but they were sort of, you know, it's like they drafted Durant, but they traded Ray Allen and let Rashard Lewis go.
Right.
That was maybe a good move for the future, and they could say, oh, well, we're building for the future, but that wasn't a good move to keep the team in Seattle and to keep the fans connected. And so everything they did was justifiable, and that way they were really crafty, and they did a good job because in theory they did make a good faith best effort to keep the team here. But everybody knew that the moves and the things they were doing, you know, they asked for $500 million and they promised none of their own money when they put up the Renton Arena proposal. If they were serious, they'd say, okay, we're going to put up $200 million. Here's our plan for how to do it. Let's get it done. But they really kind of went to Olympia, got turned down, and let it go.
Right. And how was the perception? Do you know what the perception was from people outside of Washington? I mean, I've looked up on like sports blogs and everything like that, and it seems like people don't think that Seattle fans were really supporting the team when that really wasn't the case.
I mean, that's the popular sentiment that you hear out there from people. Oh, well, they didn't, you know, have enough attendance, and so the team relocated to Oklahoma City, which we hoped that our movie would shut down. I mean, really, we had large attendance numbers. We had the worst team in 41 years play that last year. They won like 20 games.
Right.
Any team that's winning 20 games and losing 60 games, they're going to have a tough time with attendance, especially when you trade their superstar frontmen, Ray Allen and Rashard Lewis. And the fact that the team is still supported more than most of the, you know, a lot of the cities that are right now that struggle to fill an arena. We are still getting 13, 14, 15 sellouts full of people. So, but that's the story that Clay Bennett and the NBA put out there. And they said, you know, you don't support your team, and they view non-support as not building an arena for them too. You know, we passed I-91, which was controversial legislation here in Seattle, which limited the ability for us to be able to build an arena with taxpayer dollars. And so, you know, it wasn't just going to games, it was just this anti-stadium climate, and David Stern and the NBA viewed that as lack of support, when really the fans, the people who cared, were supporting the team and sticking through this tough situation. They wanted to see Durant. Like, we put up for years and years of bad basketball teams to get Durant, to get Westbrook, only to see them shipped away to Oklahoma City. And, you know, so that's really frustrating because the true fans were there. And they were watching Durant, and they wanted to see him grow because we drafted him in Seattle.
Exactly. So a major point of the film is Key Arena and everything about it. Can you describe a little bit about why the Key Arena was considered such a bad arena?
The main thing is the size of the footprint. So your average NBA arena, it's about half that size. So when you have a smaller footprint, the bowl and everything is probably the same as most arenas, and the capacity levels are fine. It's just you have these teeny concourses, and you don't have any expensive restaurants or the proper stores to be able to bring in the kind of revenue streams which are necessary to run an NBA team now. There's a reason why a third of the NBA teams right now are losing money every year, and it's because the player salaries after the lockout in '99 escalated so much that they need to make that much more money to even break even. And so the situation in Seattle was, okay, they don't have all these extra revenue streams that a larger arena would have. And so that's definitely like a big part of what happened in Seattle, and it got to the point where they could sell out every game, and because of the way the lease was structured, and with it being a city-owned property, you know, the lease really prohibited them from making money too, just because of how it was structured. Oh,
I see. Okay, so for me, one of the most heartbreaking moments of the film was this whole trial and how Mayor
Nichols.
Mayor Nichols, he was described as like the last line of defense for keeping the team in Seattle, and then at the very last second he decides to just buckle and settle. I mean, what were your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I mean, I went to the trial every day, so I was in the same courtroom, in the same row as Greg Nichols when he testified that first day, and I remember talking to him afterwards and saying, thank you so much for standing up for our city, because everything he said for months and months and months was, I'm going to do whatever I can to keep the team in Seattle. We will not let them leave their lease early. We're going to hold them there. We believe that 2 years will give us ample more opportunities to keep the team here, and I'm going to stand by our guns, and no amount of money will allow the team to leave.
Right.
And so I was behind him. I was interviewed on TV at that time on the court steps saying, I'm proud of what our mayor is doing. I'm proud of the stance that he's taken, you know, against these guys who are trying to steal our basketball team. And so to have him betray us like he did, and in the way it was done, like every Sonic fan was on the edge of their seats for the judge's ruling to be released at 4 o'clock that day.
Right.
And the news comes out like an hour before. I mean, talk about like devastating it hurt that much more because he gave us false hope. If he was planning on settling, he should have never gone to trial and given us fans false hope. What he did was so much worse because of the way he let it go down like that.
And just watching him like laugh with all the other politicians on the stand while he was like describing it is just like, oh my God, you know, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, that was just extremely frustrating for all of us involved. But he was there, and everything he said was, I'm going to keep the team here. And if you would have just kept the team for those 2 years, then we would have been watching Durant play the Lakers in the first round of the playoffs last year. And you better bet that if we have this young team that people in this region realize is as good as they are now, and they would have realized that in the 2 years, there's no way they would have gotten out of town. I honestly believe that.
Wow, jeez. So... I mean, how does it feel to watch the Thunder be successful? You know, Kevin Durant being the leader in scoring and taking the Lakers to 7 games. I mean, that's got to be really tough. I mean, it's tough for me to even watch it.
Yeah, I mean, we're hardcore NBA basketball fans, and so for us, that, you know, we made the movie because we want the NBA back, and we still, you know, watch their product despite what was done to us, because that is the best athletes in the world playing the game that I love the most. And so, you know, but it is heartbreaking. I mean, it's really hard to watch the Thunder. You can get away from it for a second and say, oh, that's just like some beautiful basketball being played, but then you look and you see Clay and Aubrey sit courtside right perpendicularly from where the players' bench are. So every time they come and dunk in the fourth quarter, you get to see Clay and Aubrey standing up cheering, and that is just sickening, and it makes all of us just want to turn it off, despite how good the game is. And then it cuts to the close-up of them, you know, clapping, and it's just disgusting. Those guys should not not get that sort of credibility.
Now, isn't there a video of you online sitting behind Clay Bennett during a playoff game with the Sonics flag right behind him?
Yeah, well, it wasn't exactly behind. We actually had better seats than Clay Bennett for the first game of the playoffs last year. Me and 3 other guys went down to L.A. We scored a major coup by landing courtside seats directly behind the Thunder bench for the nationally televised game. We brought a sign that said Seattle drafted Durant, and we had our big Sonics flag. And actually, you know, right before the game starts, I turned around and I look, and Clay Bennett's in the aisle like 15 feet away from me. And it turns out his seats were like 5 rows up on the aisle. So every time we go to like get a beer or go to get some food, we walk right by Clay Bennett, you know, just kind of mean mugging him, you know, and, you know, we dropped Sonicsgate cards on the ground. So when he got up and, you know, he had to use the restroom or whatever, he'd have to see the Sonicsgate logo staring him in the face.
Awesome. Now, that's actually kind of interesting. Have you heard any word or any response from like Clay Bennett or David Stern or anything like that about the film?
Not really. I mean, we reached out to all those guys to be interviewed for the film, and you know, everyone's been really kind of quiet since then. You know, we've been waiting for them to contact us or whatever. One thing that was interesting is NBA.com, who'd never covered, you know, is pretty much never covered the Sonics saga. David Aldridge, famous NBA analyst, came and interviewed us last month and put up an extremely in-depth article that broke down the entire situation. That was on the front page of NBA.com. So we view that as, you know, a major point in our corner, you know, a major victory, because that's the NBA sanctioned website, and so to get our story told on that is about as much as we can expect to hear from them.
For sure.
David Stern has recently said, though, that he, you know, kind of regrets what happened to Seattle, and Seattle, if we get an arena done, would be a market that they'd like to return to. Now, whether we believe anything that's coming out of David Stern's mouth or not, the point is Seattle is a market that they want to be in, and if there is an arena here, we are first in line to get a team back. Okay. So
cool. So it has been a couple of years. Has there been any kind of progress to get another Seattle team here?
I mean, there is progress. It's slow, and you know, there's been a lot of rumors and speculation about some of the teams that are struggling in the NBA coming to Seattle. So the Sacramento Kings are all but done in Sacramento. There's a good chance that the owners, the Maloofs, will file for relocation by March 1st, and that they'll either be going to Anaheim or Seattle or some other location as soon as next year. The New Orleans Hornets were just purchased by the NBA, and so the NBA now owns the New Orleans Hornets. Now, they're looking for a local buyer, but as it was in Seattle, they're going to take this amount of time to see if there's a local guy in New Orleans. Most likely there won't be, and then the NBA is probably going to have some sort of auction to whatever team folds to their arena demands. And in terms of locally, like what's going on here, there's interest, there's rumors of the Bellevue location, there's rumors of support at the county level. The problem is with the state legislature and the money that would be used to fund any sort of public subsidy to go along with a large private investment would be off the expiring bonds on Safeco and Quest Field, which were actually, because of that public-private partnership, whatever you feel about arenas or not, that was actually a good public-private partnership that paid off its bonds early, and those taxes are set to expire. Well, those are good revenue generating taxes for the county, and the county wants to continue to keep those taxes there to redirect to other projects that can build revenue for the city. And so if the state legislature releases those funds and lets King County decide what to do with them, I think we stand a really good chance of coming up with probably a mostly private, but a private-public partnership to build some sort of state-of-the-art facility. I mean, we need it in this region. Anyone who goes to concerts at Key Arena knows that we do not have a good concert venue to see a large-scale show like that. And if we had a state-of-the-art arena, we could attract a lot more, things to this region that we wouldn't be getting normally, conventions or, any number of shows. So I think that the county level has support for it. We've talked to people there. They just need the state to give them the authorization to use the funds to help promote King County.
Sure, yeah. I mean, overall, it is such a tragic story. It really hurts every time I even think about it. I just hope we get a team soon, because I feel we really need one. And it's Seattle. How is Seattle without a basketball?
Well, it's sitting here raining here on a Tuesday night, and we should be out going to a game at Key Arena to at least like brighten this ugly winter months here in Seattle up a little. So I mean, that was the whole reason we made the movie, and I think that it's mobilized kind of an army around the movie. And we like to say Sonicsgate is not just a movie, it's a movement, because that's what it's turned into. And so we're hoping that momentum can continue to bring a team back to this region.
Cool. So if there's anybody out there that's interested to learn more about what happened and how things are going, where can they find
you go to Sonicsgate.org. You can watch the whole 2-hour movie for free. You can read various press and articles about the issue. I mean, we have an evidence tab, so if you want to really get into it and geek out, you can read all the court transcripts, you can read the memorandum of understanding that allowed the team to leave. All that stuff's available to download for free on our website. So
cool.
Sonicsgate.org.
Excellent. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch gears a little bit and talk about your second film, Man Zou.
Yep.
Another documentary, which is slightly different than Sonicsgate. Can you talk about how you went from a film about the Sonics to this 1,000-mile adventure in China?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, actually. The China film was shot before we actually shot Sonicsgate.
Oh,
so
really?
The plan to shoot Sonicsgate was there as it was happening, but I already had this China plan and adventure and trip all kind of scheduled and organized. So the team left in July, and I'm like, the first thing I'm going to do as soon as I'm done with this China film is make Sonicsgate, because we're going to get those guys. And
right.
so I left in August to go over to China, and we did this trip, and then we came home and edited the film for about 9 months, to the point where Sonicsgate could not wait for another second. And we had interviews lined up, and just all the momentum was there to tell that story. And so we kind of, we got a decent cut of Man Zou, and then we kind of put that on hold, went and shot and edited all of Sonicsgate in about 4 or 5 months total.
Wow.
And then we released it online for free, and then just so much happened with Sonicsgate and with the success that kind of carried us the next 6 months. Well, then we went back and revisited Man Zou, and we cut it down to its current length, which is 86 minutes, and spent a few more months editing it. And then that's when it got picked up for KCTS 9, and we started screening it a little bit more. So it's kind of an interesting story. But in answer to your question, just regarding how we go from these two different subjects, I mean, China is something that's always interested me, especially like the last 10 years, watching how quickly they're growing. It was just an area that I was totally fascinated with. I'm also interested in bicycling and taking adventures and traveling. So this trip kind of culminated when all those converging elements came together, and we decided that we wanted to do this big travel adventure film, but not your typical travel adventure film, but one that delves into kind of the issues and the kind of macro level stuff that's going on in China. And so in a way, it's like Sonicsgate, because it takes this one thing, which should just be this basketball movie, and except for its politics, big business, all these other elements. We view Man Zou as kind of the same thing. You know, we took this travel adventure film, but it's not just about our bike trip. It's more about the bigger issues that are going on in China.
I see. So I guess let's actually talk about the trip itself. I mean, what was it that made you and your friends want to take this 1,000-mile trip on bicycle? I know you guys didn't have like a support vehicle with you at the time, so you're pretty much carrying everything, medical supplies, camera equipment, sound equipment. I mean, how'd you like work all that out?
Well, I mean, we had the choice, like when we were kind of budgeting and figuring out, like, do we want to do a support vehicle? Do we not want to do a support vehicle? And we just decided that the level of access and everything that we could get, just with us 4 guys or 5 with our guide on bicycles, would, you know, offset the pain it was of carrying all that stuff with us. And so it was a conscious decision on our part. We also, you know, went in just bicycle touring is a great way to see a country, you know, and so you get to kind of go to places that you would normally get to see, get off the beaten track, and especially in a place like China, with some of these cities and counties we went into, had never seen a foreign white person, let alone these guys riding in on their bicycles with their cameras and big bags and everything. And so I think that we got a much more genuine film, as opposed to if we had this big support vehicle and we're coming into town and drawing a bunch of attention to ourselves. This way we kind of got to go in and get a more kind of realistic, unfiltered look at China.
I see. Okay. So, I mean, obviously for a trip that's so long, there must have been some times where things got a little sketchy. Well, was there ever a particular moment where we were like, okay, maybe this is getting a little too dangerous for us? Or?
Well, I mean, as you'll see in the film if you watch it, at the end of day 1, we literally left Beijing and got into the mountainous area outside of Beijing. And we literally had 4 large panniers and a big bag bungee cord down on our bike. And, you know, as you can see, I'm not exactly a Lance Armstrong or anything here, you know. And so, and in addition to that, just planning the film and the trip and everything was so complicated that there wasn't a lot of time to physically train for it. So, I mean, halfway through that first day in the mountains, I mean, I was about to pass out. I had to walk with my bike for a couple hours. I had Sean, one of the other guys on the trip, like checking my pulse, you know, and it was like 95 degrees out.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, basically we couldn't get to our destination on the first day. And so Dovin, our guide, had us basically stay at these people's house on the side of the mountain. And I was like, man, if we're having this much trouble on day 1, how are we ever going to make it to day 28? And so luckily we were able to get to a post office the next day, and we shipped about half our luggage out, which made the riding a lot more tolerable, but it was definitely kind of scary there at the beginning. One of the other parts where it was really difficult, I think, was in some of the more polluted areas. I never felt like it was gonna like prohibit us from finishing the trip, but it was definitely taxing on the body, you know, various fumes and you know, just pollution in the air, and we're riding 60-70 miles through that all day. I mean, you could feel it on your lungs. You couldn't get a full breath after you're done riding. You just, you know, you could feel it. And so, you know, you kind of were wondering, all right, are our body's gonna last this last week on the trip in the most polluted area in China? Or,
yeah. There was a, like, I saw those scenes in the film, and it looked like it was like a fog, like a morning fog, but that was pollution.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and that's what we kind of thought at the beginning. And then once we got to Chengde, which was on like day 4 of our trip, it was so clear that it was not just clouds. I mean, you could just feel it burning. And, you know, it was different in different regions. In that area, it was more of a coal burning area. We don't know what the chemicals were when we were down south near Shanghai, but that was, I guess, less smoky feeling and more chemically feeling. So, I mean, we we found out afterwards, once we interviewed Majun, who's the noted environmentalist who's in our film, that area just, north of Shanghai, that couple 100 miles, is the center of kind of industrialization, and there's a ton of factories and zones down there that are exclusively for manufacturing. So.
Okay. So one of the main points of the film was to show other people the economic state of China. So can you talk a little bit about how it is and how it's rapidly moving to this industrial state?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think was revealed to us is just about in regards to China's growth is the urbanization of China and what that's doing to change that country. And so you have kind of an agricultural society by nature in China, where it was mostly kind of farmers, and the cities had a concentration of people. But over just even the last 30 years, and especially the last 10 years, we've seen a major change in people living out in the rural area and moving to the urban areas, to the point where it's almost a 50-50 split now, when it used to be more like 80-20.
Right.
And so what's that do? Well, that changes the rural areas, and it makes it so now there's just, kind of older people and children, and the parents of these children are going into the cities to do work, because that's where the work is. Oh, okay. And so slowly China's changing into, more urban society, and so that is on the ground. As we're cycling through these big cities, there's giant skyscrapers and buildings that are just going up, like hundreds of them. Right. And you'd think, here in Seattle, that they're growing a lot in Bellevue. Well, every city we went to in China was growing at 10 times the rate of Bellevue, and it was, kind of unbelievable. And so I think that, like, our bicycle trip, we were able to kind of see things along the way, right. And then we were able to go and interview experts to learn more about, how this is affecting the economy, how this is affecting the people of the China. And so we got kind of two different views in the film that you wouldn't get one without the other necessarily.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, how was your perception before you went on this trip, and how has it changed since you finished it and until now?
Well, one thing that stands out to me is the Western media approach to China is it's this big, scary place, and they're out to dominate us in the U.S. and they're going to grow bigger and better than us. And I just think that our experience was totally different. We experienced this sort of like warm, open, kind of proud people who live there, and as opposed to our Western media would like to think that all the people there are oppressed and it's this oppressive state. Well, what we experienced was that people were very proud of their country and all the accomplishments, especially the last 10 years, and they want to grow. Like, they want to be successful. They can have their own dreams now. Right. Whereas maybe 30 years ago, that wasn't possible for a guy like Dovin, our guide, to say, hey, I'm going to open up my own bicycle tour company here in China. That wasn't an available option until just recently. And so I think that they're less oppressed and more proud and excited about the future of their country than the Western media would kind of have you believe.
Right. So that's pretty much what you want audiences who probably don't know much about China to take away from this film? Yeah,
I mean, I think there's a couple things to take away, but I think that's definitely one of them, is to go and see China, and it was all of our first 4 trips to China. All 4 of us who went on the trip. We'd never been there before, and we tried to go in with as clean of a slate and a blank slate as possible, so then we could just let the trip and the experience kind of dictate what we thought about China. And I think that based on what we've heard from people about the film, that we do a really good job of that. And so I think it's come and watch our film with an open mind about China, and I think that a lot of those previous misperceptions or whatever of China will kind of be erased once you view our film. So
cool. So for anyone that's interested, where are you going to be showing the film next, and if they have any information that you can give, like on the internet or anything like that?
Yeah, so we have a website. It's manzoumovie.com. It's MANZOU movie.com. It'll be screening a week from Thursday, so Thursday, March 3rd on KCTS 9, local PBS at 10 p.m. The film will also be on demand for a week, so starting March 3rd through March 10th, and then it'll be online streaming on KCTS's website for the whole month of March. If you go to our website, there's links for all that information.
Cool. So with Sonicsgate and Man Zou, these are 2 very, very good documentaries, I feel. Is there anything that we should expect from you? Is there anything coming up? Or
yeah, actually, we are in the midst of making our new feature-length documentary. Okay. Our cinematographer, who you'll see in Man Zou, Ian Connors is directing a documentary on NFL place kickers.
Oh, nice.
So we're actually about 75% of the way shooting. I'm producing and editing the film. Adam Brown, who produced Sonicsgate, is producing along with our editor Darren Lund, and so same team that brought you both films. And we've interviewed, a bunch of famous NFL kickers, and we're going to continue to do that. And we're hoping for a national television release for that, either at the start of football season next year, or maybe around this time, around Super Bowl next year. So cool. And there's other projects in the works after that. So.
Excellent. Is there any place where people can just follow your work, or do you have a Twitter or anything like that?
Well, let's see. There's lots of options. There's you can follow kickermovie.com if you want to stay up to date on the Kicker documentary. The respective websites are good. I have my own film website, 2R Film, the number 2, the letter R, film.com. There's links to all my works and short films and music videos and other stuff we've done over the years. Sonicsgate's on Twitter. That's our main sort of Twitter handle at this point because we have a lot of followers, and so and definitely stay tuned to the Facebook and Twitter accounts for Sonicsgate for any news on team relocation and bringing the NBA back to Seattle. Those are sort of the epicenter for all the news for that stuff.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Mr. Jason Reid.
Appreciate it.
From MacGuffinPodcast.com. This is Alan, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks.
T-1000 can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Magneto can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Even Zod can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. It's tight. Don't even try to bite the side of style. Mr. Spock can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. The Wrath of Khan can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. The Borg can't stop me. I'm on fire tonight. Because I've got space game and it feels alright.